finished third. Justin Gatlin was partially booed before the race, after the win, and even when he got his medal. And Jesse Washington of the Undefeated with this headline: with one race, the life stories of Gatlin and Bolt have changed. Kind of want to know what a national panel thinks of that. Let's start with you, Tim Kalishaw. Do you see Usain Bolt losing this weekend changing the way you evaluate his career?
Well, yeah, I think it has to, because if you've never seen something before and you just kind of assumed this aura of invincibility about him, it's like, we never thought we'd see Muhammad Ali lose, and he loses to Joe Frazier. Sugar Ray Leonard loses to Roberto Duran. They had a chance to reestablish their greatness. Usain Bolt won't, because we presume he's going to stick with his plans to retire. It doesn't change the fact he's the greatest sprinter of all time, but we thought we would never see him lose. We've seen him always, after 20 yards, he's way behind. After 50 yards, he's still behind. And then he just blows by the field. And this time, he got up to the field, and he got right up to Gatlin, but he couldn't quite finish the deal.
You brought up Muhammad Ali, though. His career ended with a whole lot of losses to the likes
it got a little
of Trevor
messy at
Berbick.
the end.
And
True.
so could this not be the case for Usain Bolt? Let's turn to Frank Isola here. He lost. It's shocking. It's stunning. Are you going to remember that when you think of Usain Bolt in the future?
It is shocking, because we're used to seeing Usain Bolt so far ahead of the field that he's looking behind him. It's kind of like me on this show, as opposed to seeing guys and in some cases even ahead of them. But I'm not buying this. It changes the story. If you look, we all look at track and field, much like gymnastics, swimming, as at the Olympics. So if he had lost maybe the gold medal at the Olympics, to me that's a little bit different. I understand the Worlds is a big deal, but I think for the vast majority of the public, it's all about the Olympics. Now, Sports Illustrated has an excuse to give LeBron Sportsman of the Year again, like they did last year, when it should have been Usain Bolt, by the way. That's what I have to say.
Jackie McMullen.
Well, here's how it changes my view of Usain Bolt. You start to realize we've taken him for granted. So that 9.58 was 8 years ago. 8 years ago. And now in every story you read today, you're going to hear about Usain Bolt's bulky back. Do you remember hearing about Usain Bolt's bulky back before this exact moment? No, because he dominated the field. The other thing is, we talk about the lives of Gatlin and Bolt changing. How about Coleman, 21 years old, who finished second in this race, and maybe the next great sprinter that we're going to see going forward, because he's just beginning here.
Can you address the Gatlin of it a little bit, Jackie, since you brought up Justin Gatlin? I mean, he won his world championship here. He finally bested Bolt, which his whole career has been about. He's 4.5 years older than Bolt, but he had that steroid bust 11 years ago, and that's what those boos were about. That's what the boos were about in Rio. That's what they were about this weekend. Was that fair?
Well, I don't think so. It's been over a decade that he's been proven to be clean. And, like anything, the sport of running, who do we know is clean and who isn't? Some people just get lucky and never get caught.
Ramona, first on Bolt, and then you can address the Gatlin of it.
Well, look, to me, Usain Bolt is like one of the greatest athletes ever, and maybe of my generation that I've ever seen. And I don't want to see him run anymore. I want to remember him the way he was in all his greatness over those Olympic Games. I mean, the first time I ever saw him was in Beijing, 2008, and he goes 9.69 in the Olympic final. I remember being on a bus and going through Beijing, and people on the bus were like watching this on the TV there, and it was just unbelievable. He ran 9.95. in his last race. I mean, that's the slowest he's run in any world or Olympic champion final ever. I mean, it's not even, his previous slowest was 9.81. So I don't want to see him do that anymore. I just want to remember Bolt as Bolt. And I don't think it really changes anything on the narrative if this really was his last race, because we all remember how great he was.
The Gatlin side of it, fair to boo a guy who had it, who was a drug bust 11 years ago.
He's never owned it. I mean, that's the thing about Gatlin is his drug test came 11 years ago during that era when that was the predominant storyline in track and field and in cycling, and he's never really owned it. He said he sort of blamed it on his trainer.
Frank?
Well, I also think, Tony, I think some of the crowd is probably booing because they wanted to see Usain Bolt win. And I thought Gatlin, the way that he handled it, was very classy when he kind of bowed down to Usain Bolt. But I think, Jackie mentioned the back. His training hadn't been the same. So it finally caught up to him. To me, it was like watching, Buster Douglas knock down Mike Tyson. You had never seen anything like that before. It's shocking, but it happens to all the great ones.
So Ramona says she never wants to see Bolt race again, but she wants to remember him at his peak. He's a global superstar and personality. What's next for him, Tim? And could it come back? This is always the case with these
that's hard
athletes.
because you kind of want to see him, but you only want to see him win. You don't want to see him come back and lose. You don't want that option to be out there. I don't think he will, though. I mean, he knows look at the times. Look at when he broke the world record, and look how the times have gotten slower, even while he was winning. I think he knows he's not getting back to that level.
Jackie
again.
McMullen.
Okay, but Michael Jordan knew he wasn't going to get back to that level, and he still put on the uniform of the Washington Wizards.
Yeah,
These
that was a
guys
great idea.
can't
That worked
help
well.
themselves. So maybe he should maybe he should race a cheetah on land, or maybe a shark on land. Maybe that's the idea. That's
Go
next.
race one more time because the relays are next weekend. But it was a great week.
His dream is to play
30
for
years old.
Manchester
Tori
United. by
Bowie
the way.
winning for the
Not the
for
Wizards.
USA and in the women's 100, and that was an incredible race that came down to the line. And her impeccable lean, she fell to the track at the end of it.